I've done a lot of presentations on mental health awareness, sharing my personal stories on depressions and suicide. There was one time this person asked me a really good question, and he said, "Have you ever thought about killing another person?" The answer is yes. So, for those of you who don't know me, when I was 18, I started to have my first episode of clinical depression. Later on, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And initially, I was not able to sleep for 2 months. I was very, very suicidal, and as a result, I jumped off the balcony from the eighth floor, and I sustained a spinal cord injury and became paralyzed ever since that. During my most desperate moment, I was not only thinking about killing somebody, but I was actually trying to kill my parents because they were so protective. I thought that I had to get rid of them first before having access to the knives or the door to the balcony. I lost my humanity. At that time, my illness had turned me into a psychopath. I had no love, no fear, no sadness, no sympathy. I had no human emotions. I did a video on my story, but there was another video I did where I share my experience with extreme insomnia. I think that video is actually more insightful to watch and more relatable to today's video. I do think that I have the subject expertise on this topic because I can definitely relate to the mentality of some of those mass shooters. And in this video, I'm not trying to justify their actions because there's no way to justify what they did, but I'm here to provide a unique insight into their mentality, why they did what they did, what was their motive, and how can we prevent similar stuff from happening again. In general, I think that all of those mass shootings can be divided into two categories. The first category is when the shooter died, either by suicide or they were killed by cops. The second category is when the shooter were captured and they did not have intention of killing themselves. Let's talk about the latter category first, when the shooter did not die. This is usually the case when the person has an antisocial behavior or ideology. Some of them were born as a psychopath. In those cases, they have a legit reason to commit such horrible crime, and their reason and rationales are usually valid and understandable in their perspective. And there are other cases when the shooter might have a psychotic episode at the time of the event. They had delusions or hallucinations. They would say things like, "The devil made me do it." So in those cases, they were not suicidal and they were captured. Some of them were even treated and were not held responsible for their actions. I couldn't relate to those two groups of people because my illness had a different nature, but what I could relate was the shooters who eventually died, either by suicide or they were killed by cops. First of all, who would be the targeted population? I remember when I was deeply suicidal, I was insanely jealous of people who are my age, who are having fun, who have their bright future right in front of them, where my life was about to end. This is why most of the shooting incidents takes place in a school or a concert, where the shooters might think that those people are better off than he is. Therefore, they are targeted. But however, jealousy is actually not the motive. Do you know how many people are searching for the term, "I want to die, but I'm afraid of dying"? Or is there an easy way to die? Killing oneself is tremendously difficult. It requires a huge commitment and guts. Fearing for death is a human nature. Even though at one point I was deeply suicidal, but deep inside, I know that I was still afraid of death. I was hoping to go in a painless manner. So, in many cases, the shooters would likely struggle to commit suicide. They were actually afraid to die. But after committing a horrible crime, they left themselves with no choice but to kill themselves. And better yet, the police could do the job for them, which makes it much easier. The most legit reason behind all of those mass shootings where the killer ended up dead at the end, their motive was to be killed. They wanted to die, they wanted to be killed by police, or they wanted to kill themselves in a way that there's no turning back. So let's analyze some specific cases. In the latest incident at the Capitol, the shooter crashed his car onto the barricade and killed a police officer. He then got out of his car with a knife in his hand and launching towards another police officer. This was when he was killed. Obviously, an act like this was something that got himself killed. So basically, he was asking to be killed. His family also confirmed that he was suicidal. I don't think he was politically motivated, and it had nothing to do with his religion. The motive was simple. He wanted to die, and he wanted to be killed by police. It was probably the simplest way for him. In the case of the Vegas massacre, people are still looking for a motive behind the mass shooting. I've heard in the news that one of his friends were saying that he was actually a really nice and kind person, and his friend was really surprised that he would do something like that. Another report was saying that the shooter was experiencing insomnia during the month prior to the incident. It confirms that he was suffering from some kind of mental health challenges. So a serious mental illness can really change a person. By the time I was 2 months without any sleep, I was literally a zombie. I would do anything to kill myself. There was a lot of evil thoughts running through my mind. So in the case of this Vegas shooter, I think his motive of committing such a crime was, again, he wanted to die. He wanted to be killed by the cops. There isn't a single living organism in this world that wants to seek for death. No one in their healthy mental state will ever ask to be killed. In the case of lone wolves, people who kill others in the name of religion, I think that committing suicide can be perceived as an act of weakness, especially in some culture, especially in the case of men who are suicidal. By claiming that they have a religious motive, they thought that they could be remembered as a hero, but not a coward. So therefore, I think those people who acted in the name of their religion were also mentally ill to begin with. And by the same reason, they did what they did because they wanted to die. The case of the Atlantic shooter is a little different. He did not die. And he said that his motive was to eliminate places that would further drive his sex addiction. I think this is actually a more understandable motive compared to anti-Asian racism. I think it's actually more embarrassed to confess that he has a sex addiction than to say that he is a racist. Of course, when I'm making a statement like this, I'm not being racist against Asian. I'm obviously Asian myself. And so my point is, the public is always trying to figure out a motive that makes sense to them the most. People who are healthy cannot use their rationale and logic to explain the mentality and behavior of a mentally ill people. People who are mentally ill, they think differently. Their mentality are ill because their brain is medically sick. So how do we prevent similar events from happening? I wish that this video can reach at least one people who is contemplating on suicide or even hurting somebody else. I want to let you know that you are treatable. Whatever you're going through is temporary. I think my illness was so bad that people whose condition was equally bad as I was, they are probably already dead due to suicide. But eventually I recovered. I did not do anything that I would regret later on for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, I did not die, and I have such obligation to share what I know. So if you're suffering from depression, please reach out for medical intervention. Be open-minded about taking and staying on medication. And for everyone else, I want to say that mental illness is not just about helping that person who is sick. Apparently, right now, it's also about how to prevent innocent people from being hurt. So it's very important to raise extensive awareness about mental illness. The fact that it's a medical condition, the fact that it's treatable, and that's help people recover from their condition as a community. Also check out other related videos in this channel. There is this video that I strongly recommend, and it talks about why people don't even need a reason to commit suicide. So thank you for watching, and please share with at least one person that can find this helpful.